this is really the time saver and really the heart of what DocLink does. So one of the things that SWEPCO does and many other companies, they have a centralized email address that vendors send an invoice to. I set that up in my environment here as well. So I have an accounts payable email address that I have my vendors send invoices to. Well, when an invoice is sent into this email address, DocLink can monitor it, and it can capture a number of different elements from the email itself. It'll actually capture the subject of the email, who it came from, the date it was sent, and it automatically onboards it into DocLink's accounts payable workflow. So that's where we're going to kick off, and we're going to show, it's going to open up and show the first document it found in the queue. Well, this is the invoice that came through email, and you can see that we captured this information from the email automatically. And like Anita was talking about, duplicates. Well, some of the things that we'll do is, create scripts to make sure a combination of different elements don't already exist in the system, and if so, we'll mark it that, hey, there's a potential duplicate in the system, so that you're not wasting time, massaging a document that's already been processed. So while this document is in a workflow right now, really the benefit of doing this outside of DocLink is users can code these invoices against different GL accounts and assign vendors and whatnot to them. And the way that they'll do that, there's a button in this document viewer. It's all centralized within the same viewer. This will allow users to code a document outside of Sage. And so the first thing that they do is they typically pick a division, one or more. If you have that, DocLink supports it. Where it has vendor name or vendor code, if you know those, you can certainly type those in. But for those of us that can't remember, 10 or more of them, there's lookup fields here. And the way that you action these is you can type in part of the vendor name. I'm just typing in MIC. And I'm going to click on this little button to the right here. And what it does, it goes and it looks within Sage and it finds the documents or the vendor codes and vendor names meeting my search criteria. And here there was only one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. And what it does, it'll automatically fill in the vendor name and the rest of the vendor code. So the things that the system can't do or is start to index this document automatically. So we see here the invoice number. DocLink does have a neat little feature. It's got a little built-in OCR. The way you action this is click on capture area, draw a bounding box around the value that you want to capture. When the mouse changes, then you can come into that field and paste it. And so here it did a great job of interpreting the data on the screen. You can do the same thing for the invoice date, or if you just type it in, it'll always default to the current month and day, but you are allowed to change that. So when we're scrolling through the document, we see this document has a total invoice amount of $100. That's great. And because we are able to code these documents outside of Sage, and if you have batch mode enabled in Sage, we'll create a little lookup box. And generally, where it has batch here, the system will automatically create a batch inside of Sage and prefix it with whatever value that you typed in here. So we can either select something from the list, or we can type in somebody's initial. So I typed in RG, and it'll create a batch. You can put a posting date, and that just allows you to select whatever documents that you want to post through Sage at a certain date and time. You can use this field for that. When we get into coding of this document, all you need to do is click on this add button, and it automatically defaults the GL account code that the vendor set up within Sage. It does allow you to change these. You can click on any one of these lookup boxes and change anything that you need to. So I changed it, my GL account code, and the system will allow you to distribute an invoice against one or thousands of GL account codes. In this case, my invoice amount is $100, but I distributed $50. I'll go ahead and add another default GL account code and distribute the remaining amount to this GL account. So once we have a document coded, the process of this coding, a user will hit stamp. And what will happen is the invoice is appended with some information. As part of the audit trail, it captures all this information, and it just shows that this user on this date and time chose all these different values. The reason that that's here is that somebody could come in here and make a change to it, and when they do, as part of the audit trail, DocLink will amend the invoice with an amended page of the coding information. So it's just really part of the audit trail, and it makes it a visual indicator for the next step in the process. So it didn't take me long to code that. You can imagine when you have thousands of invoices, you can process them very quickly using this method here. So if I needed to send this invoice out for an approval, I can look at the first page of it, and I can choose who I want to send this document to. I'm going to send it to my approver. I chose their name out of drop-down list, and I click on send. Well, the beauty of DocLink is making things accessible and easy for users. And so what we'll normally set up here, and you see a little message pop up, is that, hey, there's a new invoice in a email message. So for those approvers, when a document is sent to their workflow, they can receive this email notification, and it looks like this. So it'll actually have a little bit of information about the document, but in the body of the email, there's these little hyperlinks, approve and deny. Well, we can't approve something that we haven't reviewed yet, so there is an attachment. We can open up the attachment, and we can view the document, right? So I'm doing this from email. I don't know if you noticed this, but from email alone, I get to see the invoice and the coding information. If I agree that everything is okay and we can go ahead and process for payment, all I need to do is make that decision in the email itself. I can click on approve, and with automation, DocLink will take that document and move it to the next step in the workflow process. In this case, it went to accounts payable as an approved invoice. So accounts payable generally will monitor an approved status in their workflow for all the invoices that have come back from a approver that's been approved. And we'll see here on the left-hand side, it'll show the user's name that approved it and the date and the time that they did that action. So this invoice is approved. As accounts payable, I just make a final quick view. Everything still seems to be coded correctly, and I can send it to a workflow status that's called batch import. I'm done. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I've done no data entry inside of Sage. That's because DocLink can do all the coding outside of Sage, and we can put some restrictions in so users can only pick certain GL account codes or vendors, and it gives you a way to control, or managers to control the spending in their departmental budgets. So what's happened now, DocLink did all this magic, and behind the scenes, it actually created a record inside of Sage 100. I'm going to crack open Sage 100 now, and we're going to go to accounts payable, and we're going to look at the invoice data entry. So what we see here, here's the invoice that I just processed, and it was for $100. That's great. And these are the GL account lines that each one of these documents has been coded to. So all of this was done outside of Sage. And of course, there's a view documents integration here. The way that this works, there's a add-on module. It's called the WebLink Integration Enabler. When you have this launched, now DocLink communicates with Sage two ways. Before, it was just DocLink feeding the information over to Sage. Now when we want Sage to communicate with DocLink, we launch this integration enabler, and that now allows us to go into any one of these records, and if there's an associated document in DocLink, it'll pull it up and display it automatically for you. So that's just what happened. It went and it found that invoice related to this transaction, and it showed it to you on the screen. I didn't stand up and run to the filing cabinet or searching through folders in my desk. It just automatically did it. And that's the real time saver DocLink. You see, we processed an invoice in just a couple of minutes, and that's from it being automatically onboarded to accounts payable or whoever coding it, getting it approved by an individual, and then imported into Sage. Super easy. There wasn't a lot of steps involved there, right? So ultimately, at the end of the cycle, these invoices are going to get processed for payment. And when they do, DocLink will get a copy of the payment. And the reason that it does this, and it does it automatically, nothing that you'll have to do unusual. You're going to print the checks, and you can print them to DocLink at the same time that you're printing them to your physical printer. So here in this example here, I've got one already queued up that I want to see a check that's been issued to a vendor, and I want to see the invoice. Well, the way that this works is you can choose one or more documents on the left-hand side that you want to search. And then on the right-hand side, there's some search criteria panes, and you can put in values. So here I'm going to be looking for an invoice number and part of the vendor number, airway. So the more search criteria that you have, the narrower your search result's going to be. But I'm going to go ahead and click on search, and I see, well, hey, great. I see the invoice, document type, and the check issued vendor. DocLink will allow you to view multiple documents at the same time. You can select those rows and click on open. Now, very easily, I can see the invoice on the right and the payment on the left. Why would I want to do this? We've all had those calls from vendors. I gave you an invoice. I haven't received payment yet. Can you provide me confirmation that you paid it? Absolutely. The way that DocLink handles this, while you're viewing the invoice, you can click on an email icon at the very top left. And what DocLink will do, it'll ask you how you want to send a copy of this document out, as a TIFF or a PDF. I'm going to say as a PDF. Click send here. And what will happen now, DocLink will automatically create a new email message. Here it is that it created. Now all I need to do is put in the email address it's going to go to, maybe a subject line. But as an attachment to the email is a copy of the payment that we're looking at within DocLink. How much more simple can that get, right? And I haven't had to type in anything, so of course my data is going to be pretty right on. So that's really the whole process of DocLink for accounts payable. And it's not a lot of steps. There might have been maybe 4, 5 at most that the whole process goes through. And that's the time saver of DocLink. And I wish I could stretch this out longer, but unfortunately, it's just that simple.